That has been our objective from the very beginning, and this is a reminder of how important that is.
So what kind of steps can you take to try and encourage private companies, private entities? Are there tighter restrictions you can put on their cybersecurity to ensure that these kinds of attacks don't happen going forward?
Well, there is an element of any company seeing what has just happened over the last several days being a reminder of how important those steps are, and that is out of our hands. That is probably thanks to the reporting of all of you. But I would say that one of the reasons that we have stood up under Ann Neuberger, who was just here a couple of days ago, and elevated a public-private coordinating apparatus or effort to work with the private sector is because we want to ensure that well-intentioned companies understand what they need to put in place and understand the risks that they're facing, because we know, as this is an example of, that it won't just impact that company, that it can impact, depending on the entity, the American public.
Go ahead.
How can the president work with Kevin McCarthy, who's poised to anoint to a position of leadership at the Republican conference someone who does not believe in the legitimacy of the last election?
Well, the president is no stranger to working with people who he disagrees with, or he has massive fundamental disagreements with. The facts are on our side, and more than 80 judges across the country throughout lawsuits attempting to overturn the outcome of the election. What the president believes his role is to lead by example and to offer an alternative of leadership to the American people, which is reaching his hand across the aisle, offering to work with members of both parties on addressing issues the American people have concerns about.
We heard from, I want to ask you about ransomware. We heard from Buttigieg and from the administrator of the EPA just moments ago. If you can help, you speak for the president. What is his message to Americans right now who are worried about the supply of gas and rising prices?
His message is, I understand, and I am doing everything I can, using every lever of government to ensure we reduce the impact on the American people and their lives. Whether it is because they want to travel for the weekend, whether they are going to visit their grandchildren because they just got vaccinated, just to incorporate another objective, or whatever it may be. And his concern his focus from the very beginning is, do not halt. Act. I need you to act. I need you to take action to put every step in place that is possible.
Did Colonial, I think I know your answers to these, but I want to ask them, did Colonial pay the ransom already, or will they pay it?
I would send you to Colonial to answer that question. Of course, the guidance from the FBI is not to do that.
Does the U.S. government know whether they paid or intend?
I just don't have anything more for you on that.
Do you believe that the public and the government have a right to know when a major national security asset, like in this case, pays or would pay a ransom to the Russians?
Well, first of all, Peter, we have not made an official attribution aside from the individual.
To whomever.
Okay, but that's an important point. Just for clarification, official attribution, I will say that there is advice and guidance we give from the federal government because we know this incentivizes additional attacks. That is guidance that's given from the FBI. But this is a private sector company, and I would refer you to them for any questions about what they have or have not paid.
Thank you, Jen.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Jen. Going back to the topic that Peter first touched on, how does this president approach negotiating with someone who says that 100% of his focus is on stopping this administration?
Well, I would say first, this is a meeting where they could spend the entire time talking about areas where they disagree, including who won the election. And the president has 80 judges in courts and tens of millions of Americans behind him on that piece. But he doesn't find that particularly constructive. Clearly, the Republican Party has to work out who they are and what they stand for. But this is not a meeting that's focused on that. So the president has a long history of working with people where he has strong disagreements, and his objective and his focus and his time today, nothing more valuable than the president's time, is going to be finding common ground. And that's how he'll approach it.
More broadly, how would you say that this administration approaches the art of compromise differently than, say, the Obama administration did? What did you learn from those 8 years?
Well, first I would say that the vice president, and the president was the vice president at the time. He was not an outside actor, right? And he worked in close partnership with then President Obama to get a lot of work done for the American people, from the Affordable Care Act to the American Rescue Plan to moving forward an agenda in what we felt was the right direction. In terms of lessons learned from that period of time, I think that anyone who spent 8 years as vice president would probably look back and think, what would I have done differently at the time? I'll let him to speak to that more specifically. Go ahead. Okay.
Just looking ahead to tomorrow's meeting, what do you expect to gain out of that meeting? We talked to, I believe, all of the offices for the Republican senators who were involved, and one of them said, if the White House isn't prepared to come down on its overall number or change the funding structure, then this is all pointless. What's your response to that?
The president's been clear, as have I, speaking on his behalf, that he's open to compromise. And his only line in the sand is around inaction. And certainly, I don't think anyone anticipates, including the members attending, for this to be a definitive meeting with an outcome where everything's signed with a bow or tied with a bow at the end. But we have been encouraged by the proposal. We expect this to be a good faith discussion, and the president's certainly approaching it through that prism.
Go ahead, Karen.
Thanks, Jen. Yesterday we heard from Senate Republicans, including Susan Collins, who said that the public's no longer looking to the CDC for guidance because the CDC is moving too slowly. We saw Georgia move ahead on the vaccinations for as young as 12 years old without waiting for the CDC. Is the White House concerned that the public is tuning out the top health experts?
Well, I think you referred to two people who are obviously in public life, but I'm not sure that's a reflection of the totality of the American public. What we know is that